my gosh.
Turn it over to Adam.
Okay, so pleasure to meet you guys. I'm Adam. How are you guys? Okay, so many of you nonprofits need to create assets, things for marketing related materials, or even telling stories, things of that nature of some of the missions that you guys have accomplished. I get hit up by all of the nonprofits in Casper. Everyone's like, hey, Adam, can you make some videos for us? Can you do something for us? But really, when it comes down to this stuff, you guys have these tools right in your pocket, right? Like you guys have a cell phone, got everything you need to kind of get things going and get things started. So that's what we're going to talk about your cell phones and what you can do with these things. Incredible tools. So first things first, I guess we'll go through the slides.
Hi, I'm Adam.
Hi, how are you guys? Okay, so these are pretty much just some line items about how I like approach creating things. We're just going to go through. We're not going to talk about how to use your phones. I'm not going to tell you how to open your camera app and things like that, right? So companies will contract my company to, it's mostly driven to either do inward-facing communication or outward-facing communication. Like if a company has a ton of employees and they want to talk to those employees or tell a story to them, they'll contract my company and help with that for like employee retention, things of that nature. New hires, there's that. Or say we want to reach an audience, like talk to Casper, maybe Gillette, maybe the state of Wyoming, maybe a regional communication. Maybe we want to target a particular group of individuals, like the housing market, right? So when you're talking about those things, we're going to approach like how do we look at the big picture of creating anything? Like I've seen it millions of times. Like your boss, or maybe you're the boss, and you're telling somebody, hey, can you go make something real quick? Go make a video real quick. But like the word production is in the service, okay? So like think about it, you never have gone to a production and people didn't take their time to do a good job at it, right? This is obviously something that's going to be outward facing for you, your business, who you are. It should represent who you are. If you want it to look bad, you should quickly do it and put it out there really fast, and it will reflect as such. So production is a key word here. Like it's work. You got to be slightly methodical and thoughtful of that, okay? So understanding what that takes. I usually like to put things in 4 silos. That's pre-production, which is planning, just planning things. And that's what we're going to talk about here. There's about 2 or 3 slides of just how we plan things out and we figure out what it's going to be, like the approach, instead of just saying, hey, go make something. It's like, what does that mean? It means nothing. We need to be thoughtful of that. So we're going to figure it out. We're going to understand what our venue is. Where are we going to film the thing at? What is the thing that we want to do? What is our concepts? Well, we're going to location scout. Are we going to film it at our location? Like here, today, like I've got a camera running right now, right? I'm making content for my website. It's probably pointless content, but I'll probably put it on my website. Probably rank some SEO, which might help my business bolster Google searches and things of that nature. So that way I can position myself to be easily found online when people are searching for my services, right? So that I can be number 1, the guy that people reach out to for this thing. So first things first, identify your location, what the backdrops are, the lighting, the sound. Is it going to be a loud environment, like a loud gymnasium, or a quiet space that you could just easily use your cell phone to capture that sound, right? Because sound is really important. It's very important, so that way you guys can hear me. Like right now, no one else is making noise. I'm obviously the center of attention. You guys can hear my message very clearly. Like you're not competing to hear something else. So always think about that. Assembling your cast, whatever that might be. Maybe like the boss says, hey, go make a video about, what was it that you were celebrating?
The hygiene center.
Yeah, so what if you wanted to like communicate that to the community a little bit and create some form of content that was just, hey, quickly make something. What would that look like? How would you approach that? Who would the cast be? Would that be you, sir? Wouldn't that, like, you're kind of in charge of that thing? And you would just say, hey, go make a thing on that. What's that look like? What's the approach of that even look like? So who's going to be on camera? Who's going to sign up for that job? Does someone want to be on camera or not be on camera?
Oh, no.
There you go. And then you're going to choose those people pretty well first. So you're going to clearly define the expectations of each of those people involved. So figuring out what your messaging is. What is that? What do you want to talk about? Well, obviously what your boss probably told you to go film. All right? And so we're going to craft the message. We're going to figure out what key things we want to talk about. before we just like pull the camera out and you got 5 people in the room trying to be like, what were we going to talk about? What were we going to make happen? And then the whole thing falls apart. Okay? You're going to find what you want to talk about. We probably want to say we fundraised, we're starting a construction phase. Maybe that's what your content might be, is that's the phase you're in. You phase out some content, create a campaign effort that's outwardly facing to the community so that way they can see what it is you're working on. You could storyboard. I stay away from storyboarding now because it's a huge waste of time for me when it comes to profit margin. So normally we don't, it's not a profitable, or and most CEOs or operators of businesses are very type A brained. They don't really do well with pretty pictures. So if things are aligned in a piece of paper vertically, like a invoice, typically our type A people respond very well, and we can move quickly, more profitable for everybody when we're doing the business. So that's how I present most information about when we create content. What does it look like? What are we going to see, and what are we going to say? Those are the 2 things I put on paper vertically, and I move the decision maker through that piece of paper. That's an outline, right? Like how's the video flow in the sense of making the content, okay? Then the next thing is the logistics. Let's figure out, like, where do we want to put the content? What kind of platforms does our organization have? Do we use TikTok? Anybody? Didn't think so. Anybody on Instagram? Are we using Facebook? Are we spending money in those spaces? Do we have budgets so we spend ad dollars in there? Is it something that we've considered doing if we're going to make content? This is a huge part of distribution. That's the 4th silo. It's the very bottom. So we go pre-production, production, post-production, distribution. And that's when we put our content in front of pairs of eyes. Okay? We're going to go through all those phases. We're just still in pre-production right now, but understanding those silos is going to help us phase this big process out. It's a production. It's not just go make a video, put it together, put it on the internet, and people will see it. You could waste a ton of labor and resources in your organization by making something and then no one ever seeing it. That's not the creator's problem. That's a budgetary or distribution problem. Okay? Like, you've failed at distributing your content. So in this case, we're going to find out where we're going to put it. YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, maybe all of those things, okay? Each of those have different deliverable methods. Sometimes we'd be scrolling. I'm sure we all getting stuck in the trap of the death scroll, right? Or maybe we're more limbic and we're reaching out for information that we want to learn about. Like, we go to YouTube, like how to fix my dryer, or how to fix my whatever it might be, or I need to learn how to do something. Right? So how-to videos, educational information is a great place for YouTube. The younger generation, Gen Zs, they're leaning into that same type of limbic behavior on TikTok, where they'll be in TikTok, they'll search things of how to do things, and they'll stay in TikTok. But that's Gen Z. They're much younger than the rest of us in this room. There's very few of us that even touch that. But to be thoughtful of what our audiences are doing, what they're doing, the behavior of those individuals, and how they're interacting with potential messaging information is going to be critical to this moment. Figuring out what we're doing, how we're placing our content, okay? That is going to be huge when you go and make the content. If you're going to make videos on YouTube, you might think more traditional, horizontal. Like, you're going to turn that phone this way when we film it, like horizontally. If it's going to be like a TikTok or a vertical video that's short form, probably vertical, if we're going to use our cell phones to film it, okay? That's just the capturing method. So that's like when we plan that all out, figuring out where this stuff's going to go. You're not going to want to run into this later in post-production when you're like, oh, shoot. This is going on TikTok? Well, we shot it this way, horizontal, and it doesn't edit well when we start getting in post-production and we run into all these issues trying to edit the thing together, right? So that's where we think about that stuff, those logistics that we need to be planning up front. Timeline, how long should this take, right? Planning, like sometimes our videos, I think recently we had a project for Wyoming Machinery that took 6 months just to get the pre-production plan and the contract signed, okay? Production took 6 days of physical labor and filming, and we are barely touching post-production. We're not even barely in the phases of where all that content's gonna go. And that's 7 months, 8 months now we've been working on it, okay?
But think about, Adam and I have worked together a lot. There's different, the value of doing something on your phone is that you don't have that sort of lead time. You can
Yeah.
say, we're getting ready to do this project. We have the capacity to do it.
Especially if we have employees on staff that we maybe are going to leverage or use, but understanding that it does take some time. That's why the word production is in here. It's video production, not like quickly slap it together and go. Like you're going to stress the person out who's working on it. You're not going to get good content. It's not going to sound good, not going to look good. Good is good enough, you know, good, better, best. Sometimes like good is good enough. It doesn't have to be the best content ever. Good is good enough. Like if you got an employee and you want to keep it cheap, keep the budget low, because this stuff can get expensive real fast. Video production is the most expensive service you're going to get into out of any creative service. Any ad agency that you go to, that you talk to try to get any help from, those companies contract my company because they can't afford to have a department that does this service, okay? Even them, they're going to pitch it to you all day long as a line item that they're going to get you to fundraise for and pay them, just because of the nature of this service. It's very expensive, okay? So you can do it all on your own though. Cell phones are incredible tools. I wish I had it when I was younger. I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is great. So okay, next slide. It's embracing the cell phone, right? Okay, so understanding your smartphone is one of the big things here. Frame rates, resolutions, sizes of the video, right? All of our cell phones have all these different settings, and I'm sure many of us have never even looked at that. Anybody here? Anyone? No one? Okay, I see one head shaking yes. Okay, cool. So in this modern era, we live in a space where resolutions are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, where we're buying 4K TVs, and we have like retina displays on our iPhones where the quality of this, or even like maybe the distribution is we shoot it in 4K and we deliver it in like regular standard HD. What are the benefits of that, right? That's, sorry, some people be calling me. That's not what we don't want that. Leave me alone. So that's planning our distribution method, or planning for our distribution, right? Do we want to go to 4K? Is it going to go on YouTube and we need 4K? Or maybe it's going to go on a traditional, like we're going to go to traditional television and buy an actual ad. That could be a thing. I make ads for Hilltop Bank and they buy traditional advertising. And so we have to package it for just our local television network. And that's standard definition, or even lower than HD. It's 720p to distribute to television, right?
Question in the corner. How would somebody know how to start learning about rates, resolutions, and those capacities? Because that's where I'm stuck. Like, I don't even know where.
I would go to YouTube.
I knew it.
Okay, and that's why like this part right here is kind of tricky, because we have to learn something. This is going to be uncomfortable for anybody that's like, hey, could you go film a thing? Like, see, I got a video camera back there running. We're going to have to take the media off of that, put it on a hard drive, edit it in an editor software of some kind, and then package it all up and then put it on the internet, right? And that's coming from that, where a phone is just all right here on one little thing, and I can edit it on my phone, get it ready, and distribute it from my phone too. It's all one tool. It is really a Swiss Army knife. The thing is amazing. So you should learn how to use that tool. You go to YouTube, learn what model phone you have, what kind of features it has, what it can do, and there's great tools for editing now too, for like CapCut. It is owned by a TikTok, did buy CapCut, best editor on the market though. Like it's the best way to edit and assemble your media. Yeah, and honestly, TikTok's not that bad of a company if you ask me. I actually love that platform, but I'm biased because video is awesome. Okay, and understanding your smartphone. That's where I say is just go online, go to YouTube University, search your product, search what you have, and find out what those things can do, right? Like bigger resolution means bigger storage, right? So you're gonna have to pay more money to store that media. How fast, how long term is the media? Are you gonna film a documentary on your iPhone? My friend did it in California. Ton of work, way harder than she thought it was gonna be to do it on a cell phone. I actually like slow clap for her to do that. It was amazing. I was like, wow, you shot that whole thing on an iPhone? That's crazy. Like that is a ton of work. Okay, cinematic quality, like framing, figuring out, this is another YouTube University thing, like how to frame an interview. How do you frame a person in a room? Like that shot of me up here is terrible. Like that's not gonna look good. It's like a shot of a bunch of people in the room. The lighting's terrible in here. I mean, I'm mic'd up, so like the number one thing for me is making sure that the audience can hear me. So if they watch that video someone does, they might hate the way it looks, but if they can hear my message, they haven't left. They might stick around and listen because I might have something valuable to say. And they might want that information because they're trying to learn, okay? So there's that, essentials. So learning how to frame things, compositions. We've all watched and consumed tons of content, and we know what looks good, right? You're like, oh, that looks nice. How do we recreate that? Just look at it, see how they did it, try to backwards engineer it a little bit. Sound, right? We were just talking about sound a little bit, how important it is. I think I always use the analogy of like a smoky room. If we ever gone to a bar, we are cynics normally. People are always looking for the worst possible things. So we walk into a bar, it's smoky. The first thing we're going to go is, wow, this place is smoky. We're going to notice the negatives first. So no different than if we go and watch a video and there's all this noise in the background and we can't possibly hear what's going on. I'm out. I'm not listening to that video. I don't want to hear that crap. I want to hear the message. Exactly. Like if it doesn't sound good, it's not good. So you can actually captivate an audience if you have good sound. So I see this with nonprofits that will try to do lives or go online. They don't mic people up. And they'll be far away trying to make the shot look good, but then the person's not projecting. So then you would have a big sound to noise ratio, like sounds, that's the sound, I want to hear her talking. But then there's all this noise around her, people in the room making noises as well. So how do we like close the gap of sound to noise? Well, microphone. This is a nice small area to capture this sound right on me. You can get like a $300 mic from the camera shop right here in Casper, Wyman Camera Outfitters. Spend $300, a little mic that goes on your phone, and then another person can talk into it. You could create your own interviews, create your own content for less than what a GoPro would cost you. And you don't have to buy another camera, you just buy a mic that goes right into your phone. You don't need to buy another product, cheap, very affordable. Yeah, learning how to light things. Lighting gets very expensive. I own a lot of lighting equipment, right? That's why Jeffree Star has his little studio at his house and he's filming his little videos when he's doing his makeup. That's why most of you ladies, when you do your makeup in the mornings, you have a vanity. You're lit very well when you do it. Trying to light yourselves well, because lighting is very mission critical to making people look good, to understanding how to make things look good, okay? So we all look not great with this overhead light in here. Window light's always a really good resource if you can use window light. Probably don't film with a window behind a camera, but let that window light come in and spill in on the subject or on the people that are in the shot, right? Lighting's important. Learn that. That's another YouTube university, is Lighting 101. You could Google that, Lighting 101. There'll be 50 videos online you could watch. Next one. And so this is, I would say, yeah, this is like same deal. Just learning how to like learn tutorials, things of that nature. Whatever you need to do to learn your equipment, take your time to do that, okay? Because when you go into the field and you're actually filming, you don't want to be like struggling. Or like, prime example, you go and film, like your boss asks you to go make something. Hey, go film a thing, and your audio's jacked up. What are you going to do? Go back and film it again. What a waste of time. It's impossible for my company to do that. It would be fiscally irresponsible for us to show up, film a thing for a whole day, and then be like, oh, we forgot to plug the microphone in. That actually has happened to Jeffree Star. He had contracted an individual to do a video for them. They did not plug in a microphone. And I don't know if many of you know how much Jeffree Star pays himself in a day. It's roughly $80,000 a day. Of his $200 million company, he pays himself $20 million. So that is about $8,000 an hour, okay? What his time is worth to him if you look at it payroll. So to not plug in a microphone to film an hour-long YouTube video is an $8,000 error of his time. The production probably costs $3,000. It's a $10,000 error. Then you have to do it again. It's a $20,000 mistake, okay? Probably didn't go very well for that whole situation. So it's something just to think about, like when we're looking into use of time. It's not, take your time, learn your equipment, capture good content, easy.
And more than anything, I would say, think about how much work it is to coordinate, right? To get the right people in the room and get everyone there. It's just about maximizing the time you have with the people that you're with.
And the production time, like when you pull your cameras out, you're doing the thing, you're trying to like make something, the production time itself, like when we pull cameras out, I try to think of it like landscaping. It's real work. Like everyone should be working in that time. Like we're moving, like, we got a ton of equipment. So we're actually moving lots of equipment, setting lights up, trying to really coach the person who's on camera to make them feel really comfortable. That's really important. So that way we can get the message that we need to, get all the assets that we need. So that way when we go to post-production and start editing the stuff into that next silo, that we have everything we need. It's all ready to go. Okay? So that way when assembly comes together, we're not like, oh, we missed a thing. We missed something. Well, you should plan that in pre-production so you don't miss anything during production, okay? So now in post-production, this is when we start assembling stuff, taking all that footage, like we should be done filming, and we're gonna put it all together. The next step. So figuring out like engagement, how do we make things engaging? We all, like the thumb rate, they're tracking every single thing we do. Like we pull KPIs off YouTube channels or key points of interest of behaviors of individuals. Like I run full analysis on YouTube channels that I run that generate a lot of money for people. And it's all about finding out what people's behaviors are, what they like, how they found the video, what retention rate was, how did they convert. These are all sales tactics that we use to track revenues, that we're trying to maybe see what behaviors people have, right? Like, okay, this person's hyper interested. We have captured an audience, very interested group of people. How could we convert them into sales? That's typically what I'm hired to do, is try to convert engagement rate into money. Okay, so are people interested? Okay, great, they are, sweet, convert them for sales, make money. That's great. So in this case, how do you do that? How do you keep someone engaged in a video? This will be the boringest video of all time back here because there's nothing to watch in it except me talking to a group of people. Super boring, nothing exciting, nothing pacing, there's no editing, there's no cutting. The videos that you're watching on your phone when we're thumbing, they're cutting every 2 seconds. It's like, every time that screen changes, our eyes see a new picture and it engages us to stay. They're inundating us with imagery so that way we are conditioned to, it's kind of breaking us a little bit as a group of people, that short form content. But the long form content that we get into of things that people actually, yep, take care. The long form content, let's just say like the how-to videos. We have a couple of YouTube channels that really thrive in that space of the how-tos. People who are learning something or want to learn something, maybe you guys have something to offer. There's some offerings of how to do a thing. Maybe you make a YouTube channel specifically for that. Do you have a group of people who could learn a thing? What could you teach them? I don't know. That's up to you to figure out for your content. But in this case, we could get into that space a bit, okay? And that's where, with our editing, we can make it interesting as best we can to not be boring. Like if it's boring, people aren't gonna watch it, right? So try to think about that. I'd say, yep, we talked about format a bit already. Sorry, I'm going on tangents here a little bit. So editing tools on your iPhone. More, I think, Tess, didn't you guys end up getting into some like Adobe software, trying to like lean into more of a professional NLE?
So in a previous role, we did a lot of video production, but we really picked our projects, right? So bigger form projects, we would work with a team like Adams to say how we created like a mini documentary. That's a perfect project for that.
Yep.
But if we were going to go to the construction site when I was with Habitat for Humanity, and I was going to say, hey, I'm trying to watch our construction manager do a how-to, right? Like a tip for cutting drywall, I can shoot that and I can produce that pretty quickly. So for that sort of things, all that editing was done on my phone. For other projects, you could dip into some more intense software, but there is like this cost and learning curve.
Yeah,
and
cost of
also,
entry is
like,
kind of where it's at.
emotional sanity that it comes with like dipping into
Yeah.
Adobe in that way.
So,
CapCut only works on iPhones, not on Android.
yeah, I think so. I'm not sure 100%. I think that's where we get into is like finding out what works best and what works good on an Android phone. I am unsure. So that is, and I don't even know like the different types of codecs and things. Like video can get very complex very quickly. As many of you have probably tried and been like, wow, this is cumbersome and challenging. It's a production. So when we get into like other I recommend, I personally use Adobe software for everything, which leans more into the professional space. But there's a huge learning curve to that once you get into it for like an employee who's like, hey, you're gonna learn this. It's like, well, you're not gonna learn it overnight. And then you're going to have to figure out how there's a lot of cost to getting all that media that you captured on your phone off your phone onto a computer to edit, because it's now you've exited the phone and entered the computer space, which could get very expensive very quickly computer-wise. Because these phone codecs, and a codec is like a language. You know what a JPEG is? Okay, that's like a codec, okay? But video uses, it's either easy to edit or very challenging to edit, like codecs, right? And our iPhones try to reduce the challenge of the user, right? So we can film stuff. Oh, this video's easy. I can share it with my friends so easily. Those codecs are actually designed for consumption, not for editing, okay? So like once we start editing them, they become very challenging and taxing on our devices because of how advanced those codecs are, okay? Because that's where things get really tricky. So when you start putting it on computers, those codecs might even not be supported on your computer. That's where it gets kind of a little, things can go haywire really fast using an iPhone, editing on a desktop. So that's why if you're going to use an iPhone, try to stay on your phone, edit in there, and don't get too Western and go too crazy with that. Storage, that's where storage comes in, right? So this media, if you got an iPhone, you're probably buying a pretty big one, like a terabyte phone, something that has a huge hard drive in it, because video will consume an insane amount of storage. Like I have hard drives at my home that are, it's like 200 terabytes. That's redundant. So that means every piece of media that comes into my home gets copied to another hard drive immediately. Redundant. So that way if something were to fail, some of my clients pay me a lot of money for the stuff that we create. We don't want, like if a hard drive was to crash, we can't go back out into the field and reproduce all that stuff. So we have to back it all up. So for you guys, iPhones, that can get kind of costly when you're backing your phones up and we're filming things. So consider those things as expenses that may come into an organization, okay? And then I think we're jumping into, oh yeah, is that it?
Yeah,
sweet,
that's it.
great. Well, I don't think I had, we'll talk a little bit about distribution a little bit. I don't think I had there's really no plan there. That comes down to who you guys are, but like we were talking about with budgeting, I think budgeting to distribute, I always tell someone who approaches me to make a video for them, they'll say, hey, we want to reach out to the people of Casper in this particular market, and we want them to see this message. Is it my fault if the video performs poorly, being the creator? Well, hopefully not, but I don't want my customer to be mad at me that no one saw their video that they paid a lot of money for, maybe, likely, hopefully, right? And we want to make sure that you have a budget so that way you can buy those pairs of eyes in your audience if you need to. Like, get them in front of people quickly. I have a customer who actually can't buy advertising because of the nature of what they do for their job. They sell firearms, Wyoming Gun Company, the liberal space that is YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Google. They don't like guns. They don't like the sales of guns. So they push really hard to keep them out of the space of generating a sales funnel to their gun store online. Like every ad on Facebook will get canceled. They can't buy advertising. So say they had a $50,000 ad budget. Well, now they have a $50,000 content budget because they need to make content that's engaging, because they can't buy ads. They can't buy the pairs of eyes of those individuals. They can't funnel people to their website. So they need to create things that engage them. It's actually the best way to go. So is what we ended up doing was making a YouTube channel for them that's more of a how-to or a hyper-interested group of people who like gunsmithing. That's what we ended up doing for them. That's very successful. People all around the country watch their videos and call them to get gunsmithing done and buy guns from them. And that just costs by making content. But we planned our distribution method specifically around search criteria. Okay, so when people are searching accurate Remington 700s, our videos show up all across America to people searching that keyword. So we're leaning into the web. Like, this is where our websites become really important. When people are searching for you, what are the services that you do? How do you optimize your website? How do you optimize your content so people can find it? You wouldn't put episode 1 in the title of your video. Everybody does this on YouTube. Oh, first episode video of this. It's so self-serving. It's your first episode, but no one's going to search that. It's all about the search. Like when I'm searching limbically to find out how to fix my dryer, I'm going to get the model number off my broken dryer, and I'm going to search fixing my Samsung 152. heating coil may be broken. Like this long keyword string that we're so used to putting into Google and into YouTube, we need to be methodical about that. Like even this video here, I might put this on my YouTube channel and put this company's name and that company's name in it, so that way when those names are searched, my content shows up. So I'm like cannibalizing the search engine a little bit, so that way I am first, I get bolstered to the top of the searches for video, okay? So that's why I'm even optimizing my content right now so that I show up first against my competitors. I'm being proactive by doing that. And good is good enough. It doesn't have to be a great video, but a video on my website is going to rank me against someone who doesn't have a video on my website. So I'm number one versus someone who didn't put it on there, okay? Does that seem useful? Do you guys think you got anything from that?
I think the key to, and what I've really come to understand about video, is that everybody in this room, because of the nature of the work that we do, has a story worth telling. But it's a matter of figuring out what your story is and how people want to tell it. And there are funny things that resonate with people. Sometimes I would create content and it would be the funniest thing that all of a sudden people really liked or really engage with. I think what so much of this is saying is like, you just have to kind of jump into the space. We had very minimal budget. We had no budget. We had no anything. I was like me. If you've ever met my husband, it's like him shooting content on his phone when we're doing whatever. But what was of value was that people wanted to hear the stories, whether it was a homeowner, whether it was a volunteer, whether it was a board member, even how-tos, how to apply, how to do this. You have a lot of stories to tell. People want to tell them, and video in particular is this incredible way to get people involved in a way that's interesting and different and reminds people of the work that's happening here. So I would say, don't be intimidated. What I love about what Adam is saying is take some time. Think about what you want to create.
The planning stage.
Admit to jump into a project. Take a second and say, what's the story we're trying to tell? Who's the best person to tell it? And how do we go about doing it?
That planning stage is huge. Talk a little bit about the Harris Crossing video we did. That video alone that we did for Harris Crossing was, I would call that like a breadcrumb of what has happened over at Habitat, right? That video wasn't meant to, it was a story to be told. It had nothing to do with generating money, generating revenue, lead funneling people to anything, right? All the things I'm talking about in sales, it was more a historic piece, a legacy piece for Habitat, for what they did, an accomplished goal, right?
Well, there's a difference between a little piece of content that you're trying to feel connected with people, right? If anybody had ever been on Habitat for Humanity's construction site, our construction manager, Sean Martz, people love him. People love him, people want to spend time with him. They'll tell you when you did something wrong, and people still love him, so that's great for him. But there's a difference from doing a quick video with him saying, hey, I'm at the job site, let me teach you this little trick, versus what we were calling like a longer form, which is when you would typically contract a project out. I like to call things like that, and Adam and I would call it like an artifact. What we created was an artifact for the organization, something that was going to outlive all of us, something that was really this point in time.
And I'm actually going to bring attention to how you approached.
The stuff on your phone doesn't have to be an artifact.
Yeah.
It has to be, how do you get your message and your story in front of people, and being able as a team to understand the differences between those two is going to put you in a really exciting position.
But even your planning, though, around how you distributed that piece of content, like the artifact that she had, she planned before it even happened. She said, what are we going to do with this thing? She's like, oh, well, Frontier Brewing has a movie theater in it. We could have all of our donors come down and watch a thing. Like, she had an idea already about the distribution method of content that didn't exist yet, and a way to bring people together that already are funding, financed, already got involved, helped make all that whole neighborhood get built and developed. She already had planned the distribution. It's like, okay, she was at the end of the line thinking about that. Okay, cool, let's go to the front of the line and figure out how do we get there? How do we make a piece of content for that distribution method, which is at the movie theater. It really doesn't probably perform well online today, but in that moment, people resonated and they came together for that artifact to be shown, right? That's that planning. This whole planning phase that we just talked about, was all those silos coming together and not just saying, hey, go make a video, and then you don't know how to navigate the process of creating something, okay? Now you have a little bit of a process of how to approach to make anything. You can take those 4 silos, pre-production, production, post-production, and distribution. Those are the 4 pillars that you need to think about when you're making stuff. That's it.
introduction by themselves?
Well, not, I was gonna ask you a question.
Yes, ask away. Please, please, please.
That's why he's here, asking
I know,
all the
well, I
questions.
didn't wanna I could go YouTube it, but I didn't.
Yeah.
So I'm with the state by nonprofit.
Okay.
That's based here, but my board members are scattered throughout the state, they all have their own events, and I'm just one person, so I did a podcast interview with a board member and was over Zoom. But I didn't find that, the quality wasn't, any suggestion, like when, now in this environment, people use Zoom or other conference methods, it might be good content, talking like in a podcast form, where you're not really filming, but some considerations, like I know the lighting, but like, do we send someone a good desktop camera? Do we rely on their stuff like that? I just didn't know if that.
I've seen a lot of content with like creators leaning into that. So say for instance, a creator who has an audience already, and they're like, hey, we're gonna interview a guy. And they're gonna interview that person over Zoom. And the creator has a nice camera, they're lit well, and they have the nice microphone, and they have good sound quality. And then that individual who's creating the content, their biggest static to creating good content is that interview. Because they're like, hey, you don't have nice stuff. How are we gonna make your stuff look like my stuff? Right? That's your problem. Yep.
I've got a little mic hanging out here.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, you've got like the little Twitch setup. I like it's a little Twitch stream. I like it. That's great.
It shows up in dancing really well, but no. But you can see the back and forth, and like I said, it was just a conversation.
Yeah.
But then the other side just.
That comes all the way back to pre-production and planning. Like when you reach out to the individual to do the interview, say, hey, what's the space look like for your interview? Not just like, hey, let's do the content. Let's get on the camera. Oh, here, we're going. It's like, wow, dude, your camera looks like shit. Like, could we maybe do this another time? But you've already planned everything. You've already started. You've already engaged in, okay, we all know labor is the most expensive thing. It costs everything. It's our biggest expense is our labor costs. So why would we go start labor and then be like, we're doing a bad job right away? So just plan, reach out to the individual, find out if they could find a better spot in their home. Because even on your iPhone, or not your iPhone, but if they are streaming on an iPhone, you could find a nice spot in your house. We've got the new cinematic mode on iPhones. Like maybe that camera is better. Maybe they need to turn the phone. Maybe you could get you could order the individual like a capture card. It's like $9.99, and maybe they have a camera, and we could plug it right into their camera system and test it out. Yeah, pretty low cost of entry to make it look good. But hey, do you have a ring light? It's like, well, if you don't, you have window light. I always say like newborn babies are the best in window light. Like when you want to take a picture of one, you're like, some window light on a baby. You don't need lights, just use window light, right? And so think about the time of day you're gonna film, how their home is gonna be set up. And then the capturing like methodology, like are you able to screen record in 4K? So that way when you take it to post-production, how are you gonna edit it? Especially if you're like capturing it, maybe you're gonna edit it in professional software and you're dabbling in that, which is totally awesome. I highly recommend getting in that space if you're gonna do it. You're gonna have a harder learning curve, but you're gonna get a better product long term, and you're gonna learn a lot. You're gonna challenge yourself significantly. So I would do that.
Yeah, one I just enjoy figuring stuff out.
Yeah, I can tell. I like
Yeah,
it.
it was just like the content, the sound worked out. I mean, it was just like.
Because was their sound good-ish?
Yeah.
So I get to this, that's good is good enough. The sound, I was already saying earlier how sound is really the main thing, but in video, I always tell my audience, like when we're working with someone, we're filming them, it's my job to make them look as good as possible and help them sound not like idiots. Because if it's our first time on camera, we're like, well, how do we conduct an interview? How do I get a person to respond to a questionnaire the way I want them to? Like I have a structure on how I've probably interviewed over 1,000 people. I've worked with like celebrities and high-end people, low-end people who've never been on camera. I think there's only one person I have ever had to cancel an interview because they were so bad. And this guy was so bad. I was like, okay, we're done. You can go. I'm done. You're done. You're no good. I'm gonna get nothing out of this guy. He's just, because when we're recording and capturing too, like when we're in the middle of that costs money. All that storage is a consumable. It's like these coffee cups just go in the garbage. Costs the coffee company money. They'll never get this back, just like that storage. If we want to back it up and store it, it's a consumable. So all that storage space that media is going to take up, it costs money. It's probably my biggest expense is storage. So your iPhone, when it gets full, or your computer is like, oh, I have no space left on my computer. I'm sure we've all ran into that. Oh, my computer's full. What do I do? Especially when we're not super techie. And we start getting into these very techie things, because video is very techie. That's why I say it's one of the most expensive. It's like the Ferrari of content, right? It's not like a photographer taking photos that is pretty affordable, but you can't track people's engagement. You can't actually track your involvement of an audience, of your audience, people who actually might give a crap about what you have to say, okay? Or might want to help you guys. So that's why I say.
Have any other questions for Adam? I would also say, so I'll send out all of this information and all the slides. I would say sometimes it's just a nice point of reference to say, I don't even know where to start on this project. Reach out or have conversations with each other. But I think if I could encourage anything of you, it's just try something.
Definitely.
Sometimes you can convince yourself that you're not equipped, or you're not
Well, and
ready,
it can be easy. Like yesterday, we did a little an influencer shoot with someone where we wanted to talk about like gun safety it was for Wyoming Gun Company. We had, maybe many of you know Kathy Holman here in Casper. So Kathy, we hired her as like an influencer because she's got children, and we want to talk about gun safety, and we can't buy advertising for that customer. So how do we like promote anything in the gun space? So we're like, okay, cool. Well, she's great because she's like a conservative woman. We could talk about like safety and suicide prevention for kids, and making sure that guns are locked up and safe, and some products that some people might be able to buy to keep guns out of kids' hands, right? That could cause issues, right? So yesterday I wrote up like 8 scripts for her that were like meant to be 1-minute videos, and we were shooting them vertical because they're going to go on her platform. She uses TikTok and Instagram, so they're not going to go horizontal on our YouTube or anything like that for Wyoming Gun. The content's being made specifically for Kathy to distribute, okay? And so when we filmed it all, we filmed maybe 8 weeks worth of content in one day, probably or 2 days. We did like a B-roll footage day where we just got coverage of people having fun, playing like in a class, shooting guns. And then the next day we did all of her on-camera delivery. And she's great. If any of you know Kathy, she can just be on camera. She has a personality. She's an MC. She's good at getting in front of a group of people and commanding them. That's just what she gets paid money to do. So she's really easygoing on camera. So we were able to just get her mic'd up, give her the idea for the script, and she could just go with it. And we film like 1 take, and she just kills it. She's great talent, so I picked my person right. Like when I was preparing for what I needed to do, I didn't just pick a random person who's going to be shy and nervous on camera, and we're volunteering them to do something, which we get into our organizations where it's like, you're going to make a video. And it's like, I'm going to do what? Okay, my boss just told me I have to do something I don't want to do. I guess I have to do it anyways, right? So be thoughtful about that if you're like a boss and you're just telling someone to do it and it's just not something they want to do. Coach them into how to do it. Do it with them. I'm up here talking to you. I don't want to do this, but I'm doing it. Because if I can do this, then you can do this too, right? Okay, that's kind of how I do it. That's how I like try to think about it.
I'm going to
Yeah.
say if anybody wants to